everybody, welcome back to the journey of my YouTube channel, where today I am fulfilling a promise. A few weeks ago I made a video where I rearranged my bookshelves, which you can now see behind me, and I pointed out one book that I was like, you know what, I should make a video about this book. I mentioned that in the video, and so today I am finally making that video about this book, and that book is none other than Kestrel's Midnight Song by J.R. Parker. And this is a book that I have never heard anybody else talk about, which is very sad. I only know about this book myself because I saw it at a writers conference that I went to, the Realm Makers conference, back in 2021, and there was this table of just free stuff that people could walk up and take whatever they wanted, and a few copies of this book were on it, and I was like, well, that looks cool and it's free, why would I not pick up a free book? So I did pick it up. It is signed by the author, and this is actually written by a teen author and independently published all the way back in 2010. So I was not sure what to expect going into this. Actually, I was I was almost sure what to expect because I really didn't think it was going to be that good. I was also a self-published teen author, and so I wasn't expecting it to be any better than what I had written, but it really surprised me. This book has one of my favorite protagonists of all time, which I know sounds like an insane thing to say, but it is kind of true. The book centers around this kid, Micah, who's a shepherd, and he's just like the most considerate and responsible character that I have ever read about. He's just so much about his sheep, his flock of sheep that he needs to take care of is just like his driving motivation all the time. And he's so protective of them and so caring of them. And he just seems so much more mature than a lot of significantly older characters that I've read about, and I just so much enjoyed spending time with him, and I was rooting for him so much. There's this one point in the story where he's been unconscious, and when he wakes up, his first thought is not like, am I injured? Where am I? Am I okay? Who am I with? His first thought is, okay, where are my sheep and how can I keep protecting them and getting them where they need to be? And it would have been so easy for this book to start him out as a shepherd with sheep and then let the sheep kind of leave the plot as soon as they were inconvenient. I've seen some books kind of do that where the main character has this responsibility to start out with, but then they kind of have to lose that responsibility to make the rest of the story work. But I love that the plot of the story kept Micah with his sheep the entire time, because that just really brought out some of the best aspects of him and just gave him so many opportunities to shine as a character, and he just made this entire reading experience so enjoyable for me. But it's not like he just has this weird obsession with sheep. He's also like really nice to the other human characters too, and I felt like his attributes as a shepherd also applied to his relationships with his friends, and that was also just really fun to watch, and it's just such a feel-good read because of that. Speaking of Micah's friends, there were also a bunch of side characters that I really loved. There's a secondary POV character named Robin, and I didn't connect to her quite as much, but I did still really appreciate how spunky and kind of mysterious and secretive and also determined she could be. So I did like reading about her, just like not quite as much as Micah. And then there are also several other side characters who just ended up being a lot more interesting than I thought they were going to be. Usually they would show up and I would kind of think, okay, I know what role this person is going to play in the story. But then the more time I would spend with them, the more I would realize like, okay, no, there are a lot more dimensions to these characters than I expected, and some kind of trope subversions in really fun ways, but also just the people being deeper than I expected them to be. I just very much felt like the author loved every single one of these characters that he created, even the characters who initially don't seem lovable at all. The author just loved them and enjoyed writing about them and wanted us to understand them and enjoy them too. And I really felt like I did. Just every person in this, I had so much fun learning more about and watching their journeys. So I mentioned discovering unexpected things about characters, and on that note, boy, are there twists in this book, and some of them just like absolutely left me reeling. Now I will say that in general, the twists in this book kind of fall into one of two categories. The first category being twists that I kind of saw coming. There's one really big twist in particular that I did predict quite a bit before I was supposed to, but I didn't feel like that made me enjoy the story less. I still enjoyed looking forward to the actual reveal, and then when the reveal came, I very much enjoyed watching that happen, but it wasn't really a surprise like it was supposed to be. So there are a few things like that where the twist didn't really surprise me. But then the second category of twists are things that came so out of left field that initially when I read them, I was almost like that's a bit of a stretch. But the more I think about them, the more I'm like I really appreciate the creativity and the surprisingness of these twists. Some of them I just still have not gotten over how much I was not expecting that twist. I was not prepared for that. And speaking of creativity, the world building and the prose are actually really good too, which definitely I was not expecting from this book because I thought it would probably be fairly stereotypical fantasy. And in some ways, it does have kind of typical fantasy world building. It essentially feels like medieval Europe, but with magical creatures and magical objects and stuff. But at the same time, there are some legitimately creative and unique world building aspects here. I mean, there's the creature on the cover for one thing, which like isn't this a cool cover? I feel like not that many indie books have covers this cool. And this creature really didn't fit into the dragon or phoenix stereotypes that I'm familiar with. It's a creature that's unique to this world. I don't remember what it was called. I haven't read this book in like a year, but I do remember the scene with the creature in it because I was like, okay, that was not what I thought that it was going to be, and it just made this world feel like something that was very special and unique. And there were several others, some things that I don't want to spoil, but there are definitely aspects that set this world apart from just typical fantasy stereotypes. And there's also this one city where the entire thing is built over this huge river. So the city itself is one giant bridge. So everything in the city is made of wood. It's like a wooden bridge, but it is an entire city. And I was like, that is such a cool world building concept. And I honestly would have liked to spend more time in that setting, but I also respected the fact that the author had the instincts to not just let the characters hang out there for no reason, just to spend time in the world building. So it left me wanting more, but I think in a good way. Also, one thing that tends to suffer in self-published books, self-published books are kind of famous for this, is that the prose tends to be just not as well edited as in traditionally published books. The prose tends to be kind of dry and sparse and just not as good as in a book that is published by a traditional publisher. But I really didn't feel that way about this one. I like the prose. There were a few sensory details especially that were so immersive that I still remember them in a lot of detail because they were just so specific. And I really thought that the author did a good job with that. Again, with the creativity, just expressing something in an interesting way that I hadn't exactly heard before that really caught my attention and made me want to keep reading. So, I mean, there were a few points where I felt like I could tell that it had been written by a teenager. In fact, I would say in general, it feels like something that's written by a teenager, but I don't really say that in the sense of it felt lower quality than something written by an adult. It felt like it was written by someone with the excitement and the newness to writing of a teenager. But the prose was still significantly better than I was expecting. I thought this book was pretty amazing. It is probably my favorite book that I got at that writers conference, and this was just one of the free ones. And still, when I think about the climax, it gives me chills. I loved the climax. It was just such a fun read and so much better than I was expecting. And I think the main caveat here is just that I read this with a lot more grace than I would for a normal book that I just picked up, not knowing that it was by a teen writer or self-published. Like, because I knew that about this book, I went in with low expectations, and I also went in with kind of this perspective of wanting to give it the benefit of the doubt and wanting to enjoy things even if maybe they weren't technically perfect. So if I reread it now, maybe I would be more aware of some things that I just kind of skipped over on the first read. I don't know. But this book has a lot of really good pieces in place that I definitely think make it worth reading, especially for a younger reader. I think this would be a really good introduction into fantasy if they're tired of just reading Narnia over and over. This would be a really good option for that. My biggest negative with the whole book was probably that the ending felt kind of unresolved. Like, the climax was great, but the resolution after the climax felt like it didn't necessarily tie everything up. It didn't feel 100% satisfying. And I think the main reason for that is that this book feels very set up for a sequel, which last I checked, there is not one, which is so sad. So I think maybe what should happen is that all of you guys buy copies of this and convince the author to write it the sequel that it deserves. Anyway, those were my thoughts on Kestrel's Midnight Song, the book that I told you I would make a video about in my rearranging my bookshelf video, and now I did. And I am interested in maybe turning this into a series about underrated MG books, middle grade books that don't get enough attention, don't get enough people talking about them, that should get a lot more buzz than they do, or are just books that people don't realize are as good as they are, even if maybe they've heard of them. So let me know if that sounds interesting to you. And if you'd like to see those videos, if and when I make them, make sure that you like and subscribe and get notifications for my videos when they come out. And that way, if I do make more videos like this, you will know when they happen. Until then, thanks for watching and thanks for journeying with me. Bye!